I did like a start to my editing yesterday while I was sitting on site and waiting for them to fix some subgrade so that I could test it. And like editing, I've got a several step process to editing, so I don't know if talking about that a little would be helpful, because I'm an outliner, and I've tried pantsing before, and it's just completely mysterious to me how anyone can get a book written in that way. But if it works for you, like, I'm not saying that's wrong. But the thing with the way I operate as an outliner is that I will write an outline, and it will be an exceptionally detailed outline, but as I'm writing and the characters interact and make perhaps different decisions than I predicted in the outline, because it is a living work as I'm writing it, I'll go back and I'll change the outline, or I'll be like, okay, well, it's going to be different moving forward, so I'll do multiple drafts of an outline that will shift as I am writing the book. And the other thing that happens is as I'm writing, I'll be like, oh, okay, well, if I want this to happen, then I need to modify these things that happened previously. So I will leave myself excuse me, I'll leave myself little notes like all through, and some of it is just like detail stuff, like name this thing that I can't currently think of a name for because I'm really, really bad at thinking of names. Or since I'm American, I write everything in imperial measurements just because that's how I think. But particularly all of the science fiction that has any kind of futuristic thing to it, I want it to be in metric because, please, I want to believe that we're all going to be using metric in the future. So I'll actually be leaving myself notes like, okay, you need to go back and convert all of these things from imperial to metric. And that's just like little cleanup stuff that I can go through. But I also, past me writes a lot of notes for future me, which is now currently present me since I'm doing this edit, that are like major things like, you need an entirely new chapter here. This chapter needs to be rewritten so that the characters do X, Y, and Z, and I've completely changed the profession of this one character to a thing that makes more sense. And then you have to propagate all these changes through. So it's like I'll have a good idea by the time I get to the end of a novel what kind of major edits need to happen just to make the thing make sense. And those are all notes to myself. And then once I go through all of those and I give it like a first sweep of trying to clean up the prose a little, because I tend to overwrite really, really badly. So I'll be going through and I'll be like, here's a paragraph that basically just repeats the previous paragraph, so we'll just get rid of that. Or, combine the two, or streamline it or whatever. But that's like the initial thing. So I'll go through and do that. And then I just stick my draft in a drawer and I don't look at it for several months. And then I go back and I read it again, and hopefully it's not as terrible as I remember it being. And at that point, I can try to do another kind of high-level structural edit, because all of this, is very structural editing. Because like the current one I'm working on, I wrote through almost all of the draft going, I'm trying to figure out what the real problem is versus what the characters all think the problem is, and how to like indicate that and where the focus should be, because it was just a really unfocused thing. And by the time I got to the end and it had some discussions, because I work best when I have somebody that I can just sort of talk to and they make affirmative noises, I figured out like, okay, this is how I'm going to structure, and I know that if I can sell this thing, I'm going to actually want it to be the first book of a trilogy, hopefully. And then therefore this will be the problem in this book, and then the problem in the next two books will be these things, and this is how it will all fit together. But in that way, it's almost like a structural exploration where I don't necessarily know the answer to all those questions when I'm starting to write. I'm just like, I want to do a thing and people do stuff and there's explosions, and then as I'm writing through it, then I'm like, okay, now I've figured out thematically what I'm really talking about, because half the time I'm not sure. I'm not very thematic to begin with, and then normally I'll be like, oh, okay, so this is what I actually wanted to talk about the whole time, so let us refine that. And that becomes like this very high level structural thing, which is actually the kind of editing that I really love. And I like editing way more than I like writing. It's a much less painful process. So it's just like get it all down and then I can go edit it and I'm happier. So I don't know if that helps, but it's like, and then you just do as many drafts as it takes to get to a point where you're like, I cannot improve this structurally any further, because, you know, there's always like, you know, copy edit shit that you can improve, and that you'll never stop finding things. But you get it as structurally put together and sound as you can, and that's the point where, you know, you send it off to a reader and you're like, okay, does this actually do the thing that I intended it to do? And, you know, I like asking my readers a lot of questions like, okay, I've given you this whole book. What did you think when you got to this part? Who did you think the bad guy was? What did you think the real problem was? Etc., etc. And then, you know, this as opposed to the end, and how did you feel about the end? And, you know, gauging reaction as people read it also tells me if I was successful in trying to put together the story I actually wanted to tell. And then maybe the story I wanted to tell wasn't really the best one to tell, and I need to come up with, you know, refocusing on a different story. But it's this very high level thing, and a lot of it is also to do with how I outline, which if anyone is ever curious about that, I am happy to do a let's talk about outlining talk, because I love outlining. So anyway, that's just, yesterday I started editing and I couldn't be happier in it, because I went from, oh my god, this is the worst book that I have ever written and I should set everything on fire and never write again, to yay, this has some problems, but it is a thing that I can fix, and let's go fix things. Woo! And so now I'm just, I think I'm going to be moving at a much more rapid clip, because I'm just doing the part of the writing process that I actually really like. So today is just going to be more like, more editing, and which is kind of hilarious, because for editing it's a lot of write an entirely new chapter, except now I know what chapter I need to actually write, as opposed to the sort of nebulous, I don't know, they do a thing that kind of ended up in the outline when I was figuring things out, or the completely different wrong chapter that I put in the outline that I need to fix now.